Welcome, everyone. My name is Kim Courvoisier, and I'm the Senior Director of Content here at Lob. I'm thrilled to be here today to share some of the findings from our 2023 State of Direct Mail Consumer Insights. I feel like it's Christmas in July, and we're about to unwrap the most amazing information and the greatest gift to all the direct mail practitioners out there. And I'm also so fortunate to be joined by these two industry experts. So let's get started with a quick introduction. First up, we have Paul Bobnak, direct mail evangelist who works with Who's Mailing What and also advises other direct mail practitioners like all of us. So welcome, Paul. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
And next up, we have Megan Hinchy. She's the manager of primary research at Comperemedia, the company that we joined forces with to create this great report. So welcome, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The gang's all here again. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, today we're going to look at some of the key findings and actionable insights from the consumer's point of view when it comes to direct mail. These insights will prove to be invaluable for all the direct mail practitioners and marketers out there. If you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A panel located in your Zoom navigation bar, like a flight attendant, and we'll get to as many of those questions at the end. Now, have no worries. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up via email after the session. Following the webinar, we'll also send you a copy of the report as well as the recorded version of this session. So for now, you can just sit back and enjoy our conversation. Now I'll hand the mic over to you, Megan, to tell us how this report was put together.
This year, we surveyed 2,000 U.S. consumers aged 18 or older who are nationally representative of a variety of demographics from age, gender, income, education, and more. We conducted a 15-minute survey with about 50 questions, very focused on all things direct mail. We were able to dive into 5 of our industry expert areas: e-commerce, retail, healthcare, financial services, and insurance.
Thanks, Megan. So we took all those data points and distilled them into 6 key findings that you'll see reflected on this slide. These findings will guide our conversation today, but as a reminder, there's heaps more information and the full report that you'll get after the session. So without further ado, let's dive right in to our first insight. Conversion, or the action taken on a direct mail piece, is what most of us are trying to get to when we send direct mail, right? We're not just sending it to send it. So this key finding is interesting because it proves that over 2/3 of consumers are inspired to take some sort of action after reading a direct mail piece. So Megan, I'll throw this first question your way. What insights can you share about this particular finding? And as a second part of my question, how do you account for this 10% increase in those ages 18 to 34?
My assumption is that marketers are just better doing mail. From personalization to reach customers to making it a little more digital experience. I have noticed personally more QR codes included in my direct mail pieces, and that makes it substantially easier to take initial action, like scrolling through clothes on a website. This is reflected in our results later on in our presentation today, which found that 51% of those aged 18 to 34 are likely to scan a QR code on a piece of mail to take action. That really accounts for that 10 percentage point increase that we see year over year.
Absolutely. And I love QR codes, and I know we're going to talk about them a lot during this session. So that's awesome. And, this leads us very nicely into our second key finding, which talks about what motivates consumers to take an action. And I'm curious if anyone on the call might have any guesses about what inspires consumers to take an action. Well, we won't keep you guessing. Next slide. If you guess that offers and promotions are key motivators, then you guessed correctly, which is why you see a proliferation of offers and direct mail pieces that convert into revenue. So Paul, as our resident expert and evangelist, can you share what types of offers or promotions are most successful, and then perhaps why these offers convert so well?
Well, sure, Kim. The biggest ones are discount offers. That they seem to work best, and those are dollars off or percentage off. There's always, ways beyond them to even sweeten an offer, like free shipping. Who doesn't like that? And that right there is the reason that people respond to offers. They want to know WIIFM, what's in it for me? And that most often just means price and the discounts that I discussed. So when you have sales and retail as a really big example, they're always happening. And this is a great time to point out that you can make 2023 the year to test your offer copy. With AI tools, you can test all kinds of variations of your copy and your pricing based on segments of your target audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So many good things in there. I love the WIFM and analogy there. What's in it for me? And then testing, right? And especially around offer copy, and AI makes it really easy to create a lot of different options. And so you can do multivariate tests, which I know we'll talk about testing a little bit later on. So now it's time to move on to key finding 3 and get a little more personal. So personalization has come a long way since dear first name, or even worse, resident. Am I right? There are a lot of really interesting stats jumping out on me on this slide. So let's unpack them for a second. I see here that over half of consumers expect direct mail to be personalized for them, and well over 2/3 are more likely to engage with a message if it is. So again, Paul, what's your take on this data point, and how would you advise direct mail practitioners on the call to use it?
No, I love this data point, Kim. We become so accustomed, right, to one-to-one communication thanks to a lot of the digital marketing that we get every day. It's based on data, which is what intelligent mail, is based on. So that's, everything like customer behavior, all kinds of demographics and other data that's in your CRM or CDP or automated triggers. There's another one right there. With all this data centered on customer needs and wants, you can test all kinds of copy and offers to figure out what is the most relevant to the customer.
For sure, those are excellent points. And one thing I didn't call out here that is of note is that images are so very important, and specifically images from businesses located close to the recipient, so proximity matters, or images related to previous purchases. So remind me that I just bought those, white Chuck Taylors, and I might want, these cool scrunchy socks to go with them, right? And another thing at Lob, we're seeing a lot of our customers use one-to-one maps on their direct mail pieces that will provide directions from each recipient's home address to the closest physical location, which I think is so great. It makes it so easy to just, jump in your car and get there. So Paul, knowing that physical proximity is important to consumers, and we'll even see more data to back that up when we get to industry and age breakouts, how would you advise folks on the call put that into play in their direct mail campaigns?
Well, first thing, you just need a strategy, right? End goals. And then you need to have all of this location data, which you're going to have to pull and display on the mailer. Then with variable data printing, VDP, you pull the dynamically generated headlines, personal names, addresses, that distance info you talked about, offers, images from a file, and you insert them onto the mailer template based on the variable data in your print files that they match to. Like you, I'm a big fan of customized maps. One of the favorite ones I've seen is a route showing on a mail piece that goes from the customer's house to a retail location. In a lot of cases, it's business or it's a healthcare location. Very valuable. Another idea is to tap browsing or shopping cart data to put a matching product image on a mail piece. There are just so many possibilities.
Yes, it's all about removing those obstacles, removing any friction, and making it really easy to convert, right? So our
Absolutely.
next key finding is one that we don't often talk about when we discuss direct mail, but it's definitely worth looking at today. So key finding 4. Now I want to break this stat down a bit. from the chart here, we can see that 51% of consumers share direct mail often or sometimes, and 29% share it rarely, but they do share it. So it's kind of like how I ski. I do it rarely, but I do. So I just wanted to call that out so we're not misleading by any stretch of the imagination. But seeing that over half of consumers share often or sometimes, and another third do it, say, from time to time, is compelling when you think about the virality of direct mail. I know that when I get a great offer, I tell someone to know because we all love getting a great deal. Like we've talked about, offers and promotions are key, and we want to share it. And it looks like I'm not alone. So, Paul, another one for you. I'm just lobbing all the questions at you this morning.
That's
What
okay.
things can marketers do, to make their direct mail pieces more shareable and continue this virality?
Well, direct mail is just literally shareable because it's tangible, it's physical. I know that over the years I've seen and even used a lot of them. For example, a lot of retailers with friends and family offers where there are coupons or those punch out and peel off cards that can be scanned in store. Or another way you can go is provide a separate response code or a URL or even a QR code for the family or member or friends to take advantage of.
Yeah, that last one is great too because it becomes very measurable and very trackable, which we all love. So now let's pivot to a finding that may come as a surprise to some on the call. We all live in a very noisy digital world where we're constantly consuming digital content, including, emails, text messages, Instagram stories, threads, the brand new, Instagram version of Twitter, TikToks, online ads, and more. With all these digital inputs, many direct mail practitioners are using direct mail strategically to stand out from all that noise. But we sometimes worry, will consumers perceive our efforts as noise, or even worse, that four-letter word, junk? Let's see what the data from the survey told us. So Megan and Paul, this data point seems to be saying that marketers are doing a good job segmenting, targeting, and triggering direct mail and having less dependence on those mass generic mailings that don't provide as much value, considering what we've heard about the importance of personalization. Now, from my point of view, I would infer that because of that, consumers perceive it as pretty valuable and not as junk. So would you both concur, or what's your perception? Megan, I'll start with you.
I think this is absolutely fascinating and makes sense on my personal level, at least. I know for me, a piece of direct mail breaks through the noise compared to my email inbox, which is kind of always a mess. I like to put a good offer on my fridge and save it for later, where in my inbox, it always gets lost in the shuffle. In short, I think it all comes down to smarter marketing, whether that be better segmentation, personalization, or messaging that really makes direct mail more salient to consumers these days.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one who puts things on my fridge or puts it in my handbag and carries it and takes it in the store later. Paul, are you a direct mail on your fridge kind of guy? And how do you feel about this finding?
Yeah, I completely agree. And in fact, I have 4 different offers sitting on my fridge right now. So that's something I got to take care of in the next couple of days. I agree with you both. I mean, I think the statistics as well bear it out from USPS itself, which over the years have shown a decline in first class and even marketing mail to an extent. Uh, and that shows that people are, yes, getting less mail, but the kind of mail that they're getting is better mail. It's smarter mail. It's more targeted and more segmented and more personalized. And when you do that, it's much more relevant.
Indeed. And so, as someone who spent a decade in the email marketing industry before I made to the jump to direct mail, I'm curious how you think direct mail differentiates from email here. As we know from stats in our State of Direct Mail Marketers edition, only 7% of marketers are using direct mail as a standalone tactic, and about 72% are using it in conjunction with email. So, how do you think direct mail really differentiates itself here? Megan, you want to go first?
I think it's all about being a physical element, something you can smell. If you put perfume in it, you can touch it. It gives you just something a little bit more personalized here to work with and touch and feel a little easier than something on your screen that you blind to after days.
Absolutely. We talk a lot about the tangible nature. It's something physical. You walk to your mailbox, that the act of walking to the mailbox, opening it up, taking it out, right? And I love the smell part, right? I would love some scratch and sniff direct mail. So Paul, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the average American gets hundreds of messages of all kinds every day, most of which just don't really register very well. They're almost completely subconscious, like email, web, text, social, TV, radio, signs. I mean, just all that is everywhere, and it's kind of too much. With mail, it activates different parts of the brain. Parts of the brain that are associated with memory and recall, uh, which is an advantage over digital. And it means that again, you have an opportunity with a phygital piece to have something that's relevant and personal.
Yeah, I love that you're using my favorite term of 2023, phygital, which is the physical and the digital coming together. So great. Well, now let's talk about something that we discovered around consumers' perceptions about sustainability. So many of us have sustainability goals and initiatives with good reason. And I'm curious how important it is for today's consumers. So, Megan, can you explain what the data tells us here around consumers' perceptions about the importance of sustainability when it comes to direct mail and the companies that send it?
It's clear from our data that sustainability is top of mind, particularly with younger generations, where we see this figure jump nearly 10 percentage points for that 18 to 24 age demographic. So, what does this mean for direct mail campaigns? For one, better targeting and audience segmentation is kind of a two birds with one stone. You can send less mail out, which potentially is a more cost effective and sustainable option long term. This also means using sustainable inputs in your materials, like the paper itself to ink, postage, and more.
Yes, all the good things. And Paul, how would you advise direct mail practitioners use this data to ensure they have those sustainable practices in their direct mail?
Well, for a brand, the best thing is to work with a vendor, a printer, or a marketing service provider that uses sustainable practices, as Megan mentioned, for paper, inks, envelope windows, really the whole process that goes into a direct mail campaign. I'm sure we've all seen the FSC logo. That stands for Forest Stewardship Council, and that's a group that certifies a chain of custody in the paper process. And there are other groups that do basically the same thing. There's B Corporation, which looks at broader measurements of companies for all kinds of things, including environmental impact. So, assuming that you've got these certifications, put them on your mail. As the survey showed, customers want it. So, show them. It's that simple.
Yeah, I love all the points you both made, Megan, around, mailing less is more, right? Being really targeted and, making sure you're sending the right piece to the right person with the right offer that reduces wastage. And then Paul, all of these things around, partnering with, the right kind of printers and folks that use these good best practices. And as just a small plug, I'll add that every piece of direct mail sent by Lob customers is carbon neutral through the entire life cycle, from raw materials to ultimate disposal. And all the printers in our network use paper that's certified for sustainable harvesting and production. So now let's look a bit more deeply into how consumers act on direct mail, because we all want to know they get it. So what do they do with it? Nearly three-quarters of consumers read direct mail immediately or the same day they bring it in from the mailbox, which makes it a highly effective form of communication for things with a sense of urgency or deadline-driven communication. Megan, what else does the data reveal about how long customers may or may not keep direct mail after they read or act on it?
The data from our survey suggests consumers are opening mail as part of their daily routine rather than leaving it on the counter, for example. When we break down some of these stats by age, the data shows us that nearly 8 in 10 consumers aged 55 or older read direct mail the same day they bring it into their residence. This number may drop a little bit with as age decreases, but the evidence still suggests direct mail is considered a more urgent form of communication once that piece is in hand.
That's really interesting. So I'm picturing in my mind a consumer, getting a piece of mail, bringing it inside, reading it, and then ultimately taking action on it. And as direct mail practitioners, it's really helpful to understand what motivates them to take each of these steps. So let's talk a little bit about relationship building. So over half of consumers, as we said, expect direct mail to be personalized. We've heard a bit about this earlier and how personalization has evolved way past the days of dear first name, right? So Megan, can you tell us more about how consumers perceive direct mail as an important relationship builder?
Absolutely. Consumers are so used to personalized ads, whether that's on their social media or in their email inbox, that it's now table stakes for direct mail, not like this nice to have. Specifically, brands can build relationships with consumers by understanding what elements of personalization speak to that consumer. While our data shows things like images of food, a recently bought item, or even local events to that consumer are of high interest, there may be some need for testing to determine what works really well for your brand and your consumer.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of other data on this slide and in the full report so people can really look into, those different elements and things as well. So now let's talk about the elements that engage consumers and entice them to read and take action with the direct mail we send. I always wanted to say the sentence, but images and offers and QR codes. Oh my. So Paul, tell us about how all these important elements and how they impact how consumers are engaging with mail pieces, because I love a good QR code moment.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's just so much here, right? You know, visual elements can be really powerful, especially when they're familiar or personal. And by the way, so great for retention campaigns at the same time. The survey shows that offers are even more powerful in getting people to open and read a mail piece. And I think it goes to that stat that been around for a long time that you have about 5 seconds to engage a customer before they toss a direct mail piece into recycling. So your goal is to make it easier for the customers by using your copy, like headlines and subheads, white space, the flow from the outside in, and that all lets them easily scan through the mail piece. And then QR codes stand out in the CTA, especially because consumers have gotten to know them so well in the last couple of years. And they also make it really easy to take advantage of an offer.
Right. I feel like QR codes are like a great 90s trend that all of a sudden came back on the scene. They were around, then they quietly just disappeared. And then during the pandemic, there was this resurgence of QR codes on use in things like, restaurant menus because they didn't want to use, hard copy menus, etc. So we've seen them come back stronger than ever. And in our State of Direct Mail 2023, we see that marketers are using them more and more. In fact, 41% are using QR codes as a direct mail measurement tool. And it looks like it's really paying off. So I'd encourage folks while we're on this screen to scan that QR code there on your screens and see what happens. Next up, Megan, I really want to hear more about offers and promotions and how they motivate customers to take action. What does the data tell us about how different age demographics may respond to these factors? You've got all the good data.
Well, interestingly, we saw the older they responded, the more likely they are to be motivated by a promotion or offer, with 73% of those 55 or older saying an offer or promotion would inspire them to take action. In our open-ended questions in our survey as well, we saw a theme in responses that doubled down on the importance of compelling offers. Respondents who remembered a recent piece of direct mail that inspired them to take an action often cited coupons, discounts, promotions, free samples, and the like to inspire their action.
Great. So as we're taking this journey down, the customer path with them, I'm curious what most consumers do after they get the direct mail piece to take action and how. Like, do they go to a store? Do they go to the website? What do they do? Let's take a look at that. So Megan, another question for you. It sounds like direct mail is an effective driver of website traffic and foot traffic to a physical store and location, and ultimately conversion to purchase. From all the data I'm looking at here, what else would you add?
Well, that's absolutely correct, Kim. Direct mail inspires action, no matter the industry or age demographic when we were looking at the data. While you called attention to some of the foot traffic and the web traffic, I think it's also really important to note the number of respondents that also check out reviews online or social media channels. It is so critical these days to have a fully omni-channel approach to your marketing if you want to convert prospects to paying customers.
Absolutely. And I know we have a lot more data when we get into the age breakouts along the lines of like, what do they do? How do they take action? And how do they learn more? There's some really interesting nuances by, by age breakout, which we'll see a little bit. So now we're going to talk about the format of the mail piece, whether it's a brochure or a postcard or a catalog, and what consumers prefer, and some important industry, like I said, industry information and age demographic insights. So let's look at some popular formats. Based on what we've heard about engagement with images, this data doesn't really surprise me, right? Catalogs and magazines are so visually engaging, easy to consume and take action on. Megan, what other data do we have regarding popular formats, especially when it comes to if a consumer knows a brand or doesn't, as we can see here from all of our colorful charts, based on if they've done business with it or had a relationship or haven't purchased in a year, there's some nuance here. Tell us more.
Sure thing. So, as you said, catalogs and magazines are preferred no matter the format, but that 55% stick out for brands that folks already have a relationship with, really showing that those imagery and more tangible assets you can have in a catalog or magazine are really salient and resonating with consumers. We also see that respondents are more likely to read uh, letters and brochures than a lot of these other formats, especially when it's from a brand they have a relationship with as well. Interestingly enough, when we break this down by age, once again, we see that respondents age 18 to 34 are significantly more likely to read letters compared to their older counterparts, potentially due to life stages and the type of mail they're receiving.
Definitely. And then Paul, knowing that the image-driven formats of, as we see here, catalogs and magazines are so popular, how can folks on the call put that into play for maybe other formats they send, like postcards or self-mailers?
Well, one trend I've seen in direct mail over the last 15 or so years, and it's supported by statistics from Who's Mailing What, is that the number of words on direct mail pieces in any format has been decreasing pretty significantly. So for postcards and for folded self-mailers, you want to use bold images, interesting, colorful graphics, icons, even digital ones, because we become so familiar with them. Short, punchy copy, and then start, as I said before, building a hierarchy that gets the recipient's eyes to move across the mail piece quickly. In the case of a folded self-mailer, to get inside and go across the spreads or folds to understand the offer, and then get to the call to action. And that will all make it much more likely that your mailer will be read sooner and acted upon.
Yeah, those are great points. And, I know one of the big differences between email and direct mail, like we were talking about before, when it comes to like the offers and things like that, is in email, we often keep our end user very focused on a singular call to action, right? Or a single offer, so we don't distract them with multiple things. But what we see a lot in direct mail is, multiple offers, multiple ways to take action, whether that be a phone number, scan a QR code, have a custom URL on there. So really giving them those options too, which I think is really interesting. So in the interest of time, I'll keep us moving forward and let's take a look at some industry insights. And we'll start with our friends in retail, so brick and mortar. And there's heaps of great data points here about physical retail locations. And that big stat in the right corner reinforces what we heard at the very beginning of this session about how many people read their direct mail right away. And brick and mortar stores are really leading the pack at 93%. That's some incredible engagement. So if I have a physical location, I'm going to send out some direct mail right away because I know it's going to get read. Megan, what else here stands out for you?
For me, the most notable difference in retail compared to some of our other industries we looked at is really the format that is most likely to be read. This segment really benefits from easy to photograph products like clothing and home goods, which is why we see over half say catalogs and magazines are their most likely read format for a retail brick and mortar store. To attract more attention via direct mail, imagery and collaboration with compelling offers, as we learned earlier today, could inspire more action from your consumers.
Yeah, the formats here are really like they stand out, right? Because if you think about catalogs, brochures, postcards, they're all super, image driven and super easy to consume. So I love that. Well, next up, let's talk about healthcare. So when I looked at these data points, what I'm seeing is they make a lot of sense, right? With 42% of consumers preferring letters and envelopes, because you really don't maybe want your healthcare related things coming to you where everyone can see. But the postcard format isn't far behind, which is telling me more and more healthcare businesses maybe using, postcards for new customer acquisition purposes and things like appointment reminders. Paul, what stood out for you here and for our healthcare folks?
Well, these are just such great insights, Kim. I was really intrigued by the 81% of people who immediately read or save the mailer for later. 38% keep it and read it at a later time, which is the highest of the verticals surveyed, even if just by a little bit. This is healthcare we're talking about. It can be complex, it can be confusing, maybe with a lot of legalese in the mailer. So you want to take your time with it. Another really good stat for me is that 23% of people said that they read newsletters or letters from a brand they currently use. Again, most of all the verticals. And this is because they trust long form writing and content to build trust in the brand and build relationships along the way.
Yeah, that's such a key point, not just sending out, their bills or their invoices or their, healthcare results from their latest test, but using those letters as a way to build those relationships and build that trust and make sure that your brand is staying top of mind with consumers is so important. And that's a great use case for direct mail. So next we'll move forward to financial services because I heard these stats are money. That's my mom joke for the day. Now I'll spare you. So again, when it comes to preferred formats, we see letters leading the pack here. Because again, you're not going to want your bank statement on a postcard. But in all seriousness, brochures and postcards aren't that far behind, which speak to the use cases that financial institutions are tapping into for their direct mail. Megan, what else would you add here?
Well, as you said, it's all about the money. For financial service industry folks, promotions are going to be key in your industry. We found that 35% of consumers are likely to read a piece of direct mail if it contains a promotion, let's say a cashback or a reward point option, for a product they already have with the banking institution. Another 28% would be likely to read the mail piece if it contains promotions from a product or service they do not currently use. A great opportunity for acquiring new products from that consumer.
Fantastic. I love it. So now let's move on to e-commerce. So for e-commerce, catalogs and magazines are, of course, a natural format, as are self-mailers or brochures and postcards with their easy to take with you format. Paul, as our evangelist, what else would you call out here?
Hmm. Well, Kim, for people who currently use an e-commerce brand, 27% said that they read mail for products and services that they don't have. From what I see in the mail, a lot of e-commerce companies are pretty careful about how much they mail. So at the same time, there's a really great opportunity here for them to cross-sell or upsell to retain their customers.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, what comes to mind for me for e-commerce too is I see e-commerce probably doing omnichannel the best, right? They're really integrating all of their touch points along the customer journey. So integrating email and social and text and direct mail and really using them synergistically, to benefit each other, and make all of their results stronger. So I love that. And seeing the breadth of the different formats that e-commerce is using, and how likely they are to be read. So that's fantastic. So next up, last but not least, is our insurance friends. And it appears a lot of consumers are grabbing that mailer and getting after it, which I know my friends at Next Insurance, Tim, are very happy to hear about. Megan, what stands out for you here on, how they're likely to read or any of those steps?
Sure. So while not on the slide here today, there's definitely more in the report. Something really interesting is the difference in age demographics for our insurance industry. Compared to those 35 or older, those 18 to 34 are significantly less likely to say they rarely read direct mail from insurance providers and throw it out. Similarly, they are significantly more likely to read letters and envelopes, suggesting a really easy way to optimize mail sends to this younger insurance consumer who may be more difficult to capture. As you know, when you're young, you think you're invisible. You don't need insurance as much. So it's a really great opportunity to work with this specific niche.
Fantastic. And it's like you knew that next we were going to talk about our age demographic breakouts, specifically 18 to 34-year-olds. So let's do it. So from 18 to 34 years old, you go through a lot of life stages and changes. And when I look at the data points on this slide, they really paint a picture of these actions. And I'm thinking about, preferred businesses that they like to receive direct mail from. For instance, local businesses. If I'm a college student, getting offers and promotions from establishments close to my university would be important, and I'd be likely to take action on them. And as I graduate, I have to get my own health care, I have to get insurance, and learning about options would be really helpful as I'm establishing my credit. So banking and financial services become really important. So Paul, put yourself in the shoes of a direct mail practitioner targeting 18 to 34-year-olds. And what would you call out from the rest of the data points?
Well, one thing that really jumped out to me is actions taken. 53% said that they searched for a brand or product or service online, and all of the other actions taken ranked lower. So 65% of people will read a promotion as soon as they get their mail, but they might be skeptical. They may not necessarily want to act on it right away. As you said, these life stages, they're not necessarily a time for making hasty decisions. So in your mail, be sure to provide helpful content that helps them make those decisions.
Yeah, and I think, it's a good point too about how brands are using direct mail as a way to introduce themselves, right? And folks really consumers like getting to know brands through direct mail, for brands they don't know. So I think this kind of top action taken makes sense. If it's a brand you haven't heard of course, the first thing you do is go online and look at their website. So that makes a lot of sense. So now let's move on to our 35 to 54-year-olds. So look at how brick and mortar stores pop up here for 35 to 54 that wasn't on the 18 to 34-year-old radar. But with local and healthcare businesses being pretty similar. Megan, how do consumers in this age breakout maybe differ from what we saw in that younger 18 to 34-year-old group? And what else would you mention?
While we see some of the same themes as with our younger group, there is nearly a 10 percentage point difference in top actions, like visiting a brand service website or searching for the product online. What's more, 7 in 10 read direct mail the same day they bring it into their residence. This suggests this group could find QR codes and personalized URLs a more salient element to direct mail than maybe some of their other age demographic counterparts, especially from those preferred businesses you mentioned, like local organizations and brick and mortar retailers.
Well, then that makes sense why I love QR codes so much, because I am right in this age demographic. So there you go. Real life scenario right here. So let's move into our last category, our 55 plus friends. And from the looks here, it looks like we're sticking pretty close to home, doing business in person at physical locations. So Paul, what things would you call out for those looking to target 55 and older consumers?
Well, Kim, that healthcare figure, 27% really jumps out at me. One way I look at it is to go back to the life stages that we've already talked about for other segments. This may indicate that there's a feeling or perception by the respondents that they're kind of set or happy with their healthcare, whether it's a plan or a practitioner. And if you're going to market to them, really try to do something different that stands out. And as for actions taken, 43% are about visiting a retail location and 34% buying a product or service. And that tells me that direct mail is really especially persuasive for this group, which is backed up also by another section that's not on the slide, but in the report about direct mail attitudes. So very valuable to look at.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate that. All of these insights have been so helpful as we consider targeting our campaigns to certain age demographics. And as a reminder for the audience today, there's a lot more data for each industry as well as the age buckets and the full report you'll get after the webinar. So be sure to check it out and share it with your fellow direct mail practitioners. So now let's wrap up our discussion and get to some of your questions. Taylor Swift may be reaching millions with her The Eras Tour, but as we've heard today, you can reach millions of consumers through the power of personalized, relevant, and intelligent direct mail. The data in this webinar and the accompanying report prove that consumers like, read, share, and take action on value-add direct mail that's relevant to their customer journey. Intelligent direct mail truly puts the power to build lasting relationships with customers in your hands and their mailboxes. The State of Direct Mail Consumer Insights report contains a lot more information that can help you use direct mail more effectively to reach your target audience. And I'm going to sum it all up like I always do by saying the future has never looked brighter for marketers or intelligent direct mail. And with that, let's see what questions we have today. Give me 1 second to peruse these really quickly because we have a bunch coming in. Okay, I'm going to take Megan and Paul off the hot seat for a second, and I'll take the first question. It says, how can you personalize a direct mail piece when you have a lack of or poor data? Now, I have to kind of chuckle because I don't know that I've ever worked at a company that has perfect data. If anybody in the audience can raise your hand and tell me that you do, then I'm gonna buy you a drink after the webinar. But we all struggle with this, and it's a challenge. So let's say that you're me and you've been working in email for 10 years, and so you have a very robust list of email subscribers, but you want to start sending direct mail because you hear how effective it is. And you want to start doing that. And so what you can do is you can easily take and append the data that you have. You can take those email addresses and append them and get the physical mailing addresses for all of those folks on your mailing list. And then what you can also do is use address verification to ensure that they're mailable and deliverable before you spend a penny to send them a piece of direct mail. So that's a fantastic way to take the data you do have and supplement or append it and really round it out so that you can do more with that. In addition, I'd say you could use integrations to get more data. So, connecting with your marketing automation platform or your CDP. These are all great ways, your CRM, to integrate the data you do have about your customers and use that again to do the kind of robust personalization that we want beyond, God forbid, your resident. So I'll go on to the next question. Read through these real quick. Okay, Paul, here's one for you. If you were to run an A/B test to optimize your direct mail offer for conversion, would you test the offer copy or the mode of redemption, and why? Good question.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one. Well, there's an old adage in marketing from Mal Decker, a marketing guy from years and years ago. Rule number one, test everything. Rule number two, see rule number one. and this really speaks to what this year is about. 2023 is the year to test direct mail copy. It's the perfect time to test A/B versions of your copy, variations on your offer, all tied to segmentation factors. Now, if you want to get into multivariate testing, maybe you'll find audiences and verticals where the response is, more comfortable or easy with a QR code. But I think that testing copy offers, it's just, pays off a lot more.
For sure, for sure. It looks like we have probably time for one last question because we've had such great conversation here today. I'm trying to pick a really juicy one. Okay, this is going to be for both of you. I'll start, Megan, with you, and maybe you could answer this for the perspective of that younger generation, those 18 to 34s. What 3 elements or tactics can you incorporate in your direct mail campaigns to make it highly relevant so that people will act on it rather than junk it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say our data shows it comes down to one, enhancing that digital experience we've been talking about so much today, whether that be QR codes, your PURLs, or some other element to make that experience more seamless. 2, ensuring a smooth omni-channel experience and strategy. We see that especially in the younger generations, they're looking at their phone, email, and mail. It's never just one medium. And lastly, personalization. It's so ingrained in everything we see these days that you must do it with direct mail. It's no longer an optional fun add-in. These elements were salient to all of our age demographics today, but particularly that younger group, indicating that any of these will make your campaign more effective and efficient.
Fantastic. And Paul, how would you maybe answer that for those 35 plus folks?
Well, for the older audiences, the survey showed that there's less enthusiasm for personalization. So one thing I would do is certainly focus more on just better targeting and segmentation. I think that goes a long way in driving results. For businesses and brands, especially ones that are local, look for ways to drive traffic to a physical location. And I'd add to that, providing a great customer experience. The direct mail attitudes section, again, in the report, has some really great insights on where and how, people in this really big cohort want to interact with mail. And thirdly, always test. And given that this is a really large group of people from 35 up, there are a lot of subgroups. So test everything to them because you're going to get different results based on the breakdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the testing for sure. I have a motto, it's ABT, always be testing. You can learn so much, learn, iterate, and optimize. That's my strategy there. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. But for any that weren't answered, promise we will follow up via email with your personalized response. So have no fear. And before we wrap up, I'm going to launch a quick poll to see if you'd like to learn more about Lob's direct mail automation platform that transforms direct mail into intelligent mail at scale. I'd like to thank you all for coming. And again, thank our awesome speakers, Megan and Paul. You have been incredible. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And for everybody on the call, keep your eyes peeled for your copy of the recording and the State of Direct Mail Consumer Insights Report. Until next time, happy mailing.